Hello everyone, and welcome to Creating an Accessible Advanced PDF Document. My name is James Herndon, and I'm an accessibility consultant at a company called Equal Entry. We do trainings like this, and we also do audits for accessibility on site systems, apps, VR experiences, and so on. And we do a lot of different work around trying to help people understand core concepts of accessibility and how, building on the core concepts, you can get most of the way there in terms of your accessibility goals. Most of it is less complicated than many people would have you imagine. Unfortunately, PDFs are often an exception to that, but that doesn't mean we can't fix them. So in the Microsoft Word training, we ended with exporting to a PDF, and we learned the importance of starting with a really good source file. But at the very tail end of that class, we also learned that even if a document passes the Word accessibility checker, we may still need to do a few things within Adobe. And in this class, I want to build on that by talking about what to do when you don't have the source document, when you just have the PDF. And if you can't get your hands on the source document, how can you remediate a PDF? It's a frustratingly common situation. And in service of that reality, I'm going to show you how several different aspects of PDF accessibility can be remediated even without the source file. The structure of today's training will follow a series of the most common issues we see in PDF documents. We'll talk about each of them at an introductory level, and then we'll look at the demo document so I can show you how the remediations are made. Then at the end, we'll come back and talk about resources and key takeaways. So before we get started, I want to again reiterate that if at all possible, start from a good source document. And Word documents are really the best way to go because they're easy to make accessible. So if you can get an accessible Word document and that's your baseline, you're already well on your way to an accessible PDF. So we highly recommend you start there. Next is to always work from a final document rather than a draft, because otherwise you'll have to do everything all over again. PDF tags can be very finicky to deal with, and so if at all possible, you don't want to have to carefully set all the tags just so and then have somebody try to edit one little thing, because that one little thing can throw off the accessibility of the full PDF. So again, try to work from a final version when you're doing remediation. So the first thing we're going to do together is run the Acrobat Accessibility Checker. It's going to scan our document. It's going to look for characteristics of accessible PDFs, such as the presence of tags, which is the most important aspect of PDF accessibility. And it's going to check whether or not the document has a programmatic title. It's going to confirm that anything with special formatting is set up correctly, forms, tables, lists, and so on. It's going to look at all of the images and make sure that they either have a text alternative or they are marked as decorative. It's going to look at how the document is structured, your headings, your bookmarks, and confirm whether or not that structure makes sense. And it's always going to remind you to manually check the reading order and validate the color contrast. So let's switch over to our demo document. This is an abbreviated version of the Montgomery County My Plan Emergency Preparedness Workbook. I picked this document because it has lots of different types of content in it, and I think it's representative of many different county PDFs that I've seen. Before I start remediating it, I'm going to save a copy. Now we're going to run the checker. I'm going to select All Tools, View More, and scroll down to Prepare for Accessibility. I have options to automatically tag the PDF, change reading options, check for accessibility, open the report, identify form fields, add alternate text, use Setup Assistant, fix reading order. These are all useful accessibility features, but we can take care of a lot of them from within the checker itself. So we're just going to select Check for Accessibility. I'm going to leave the default options checked and select Start Checking. Now, before I panic about all these issues that it found, I'm going to remember that this PDF has not yet been tagged. What are PDF tags? Well, tags provide a logical structure tree for adaptive technology like screen readers, speech-to-text applications, or any tool that enables people with disabilities to access digital content. Adaptive technology relies on certain programmatic conventions in order to access content in our documents or web pages. And the way that those technologies interact with a PDF is via the accessibility tags tree. And if a PDF does not have tags, adaptive technology is going to try to guess what something is inside a PDF, and more often than not, it's going to get it wrong. So if a document doesn't have any tags at all, that makes it extremely unlikely that the PDF will be accessible. Personally, I've never seen a PDF without tags that was accessible. The screen reader may still be able to pick out a few things in the document, but for the most part, it's going to be very difficult to parse. But luckily for us, tags can be added automatically, which we're going to do in a moment, from that checker panel. The auto tag tool is not perfect, as you'll see later, but it's an excellent starting point. So let's go back to our document. I can see the checker results here, and I can expand the document accordion. And as you can see, the very first issue we have here is tagged PDF failed. So what I can do is select tag PDF failed. I can open the context menu by right-clicking, and I'm going to select fix. And there you go. Just like that, the document has been tagged. If I go down here to the tags panel and open it up, there are now tags in the document. I'll go back to the checker here. And the checker, you notice, is now flagging significantly fewer issues. So that is probably the most important lesson in today's training. Always tag your PDF documents. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Acrobat Accessibility Checker is always going to flag logical reading order and color contrast and ask you to verify that those items have been checked manually. We'll take care of that a little bit later, but for now, our next issue to remediate is title. Programmatic titles can help people more easily determine which file is open without having to read or interpret its content. If someone has multiple tabs open in Windows or Mac OS and they put focus on a PDF document with a title that's been set correctly, then their screen reader will tell them the name of the document. They don't have to put focus inside it and read the document in order to figure out what it is. If the file name of the PDF happens to be a long alphanumeric code that doesn't correlate to what the actual title of the document should ideally be, that's yet another scenario where a programmatic title can lend some clarity. Now, if you set the title in Word or InDesign, then that title should be carried over to Acrobat when you export the document. But if we don't have the source document, we can still set a title. And I'm going to show you how. I'm going to go back to Acrobat. And in the Accessibility Checker panel, I'm going to highlight where it says Title Failed. And once again, I'll open the context menu by right-clicking. I'm going to select Fix. The description dialog opens up. Under Title, I'm going to uncheck Leave As Is. And in the title field, I'm going to enter MCG-PDF Training Demo Document. And while I'm here, I'll go ahead and set an author for this document so that if somebody has questions about it or suggestions for a later update, we know who to reach out for. So I'll uncheck Leave As Is for author. I'll put in my name. And when I'm done, I will select OK. And you'll notice that the title is now marked as passed in the Accessibility Checker panel. So for now, we're going to close the document accordion, and we're going to move on to the next item found by the checker, which is under Forms. Forms are where things start to get complicated. A lot of PDFs use them, but they're easy to mess up from an accessibility standpoint. And part of that is how they're usually made. You can use Acrobat to create forms using one of two methods. You can take an existing electronic document, Microsoft Word or Excel or even a pre-existing PDF, and convert it into an interactive PDF form. Or you can scan a paper form, and Acrobat will use optical character recognition to convert it into a PDF form. But if you don't tag and label the fields properly, then they will just be static fields. You won't be able to fill them out or select from a drop-down or put checks in the checkboxes. For each field type, you can set various options through the Form Field Properties dialog. Every type of form field dialog will have a General tab and an Options tab, and then a few other tabs depending on what it is. So here in the slide, I have a Properties dialog for a checkbox. The General tab is open, and in the Name field, I have a checkbox named Checkbox 9, and the tooltip is Check if Address Change. That tooltip is what my screen reader will announce when it puts focus on that checkbox. So as document authors, we want to be sure that our form elements have tooltips. And here's how we would do that. In the Accessibility Checker panel, it says that the forms in our document have failed the Field Descriptions check. So to fix that, I will go back to the Main Tools menu and select Prepare a Form. Now we're going to go to the Fields panel, and we will go through these form fields, and we'll see if we can locate the misfit fields that don't have a tooltip. So look at the tooltip. I will highlight the form field in the Fields panel here. I will open the context menu and select Properties. That's going to show us the name and the tooltip, and the tooltip is what we are focused on here. It looks as if Fire 911 Emergency does have a tooltip, so it can't be that one. I'll go down to the next one, and I can leave the Text Field Properties menu open when I do this. When we begin to make edits, we will have to save, close, and reopen it. It's just, again, one of the many quirks about Acrobat. If you leave the menu open and make edits, then they won't be preserved. But if you're just reading what the tooltips are, then we can leave it open. Tooltip Maryland Relay, that's good. Poison Control has a tooltip, that's good. Clothes and shoes fit for the weather, that's good. Medications. Hygiene items. Cash and small bills. Supplies for your pet or service animal. Eyeglass prescription. Important documents in a waterproof container. Cell phone charger. Looks like that one doesn't have a tooltip, so I'm going to say cell phone charger. I will do save, close, save again just to be sure. Then I'm going to go to 13 and open up the properties again. Aha! So I think I found the cluster of form fields missing a tooltip. I added communication devices equipment, close, save, next one, checkbox 14, open up the properties, and we can continue like so. Favorite personal and or comfort items. Contact information for your household and members of your support network. Food, medicine, and favorite toy. Identification tags. Plastic bags, disposable gloves, and other items for animals' care. Leash, collar, harness, muzzles. Cage carrier labeled with contact information. No spill food and water dishes. Now this is a tricky one. It looks as if this has a tooltip because it says other, but it looks as if the blank associated with other has been labeled as other, which is a little bit misleading. And dishes is also misleading that it's in that blank. As an example, because we have dishes above that, I would suggest changing this to fill in the blank, because there's likely a checkbox here that's also called other and probably needs a tooltip. I'm going to call this fill in the blank. Now it has a tooltip as well as text fill in the blank to make it less ambiguous. And I almost missed other, but as suspected, it does not have a tooltip. So add that. Veterinary records and proof of ownership. Add your own to-go kit supplies on the lines below. That has a tooltip, as does the second one and the third one. And that appears to be all of them. I'll close the Fields panel, reopen the checker panel, and run it again. Open the menu, go to check again. Field descriptions now passes. I'll close the forms accordion, open the next one, which is Figures Alternate Text, under the Alternate Text heading. We talked about alternative text in the word training, but just as a quick refresher, we use alternate text to provide descriptions of the images in a PDF. And this text can be read aloud by adaptive technology so that people who are blind or have low vision can access the content of the image. And we can set those values right from the accessibility checker. There are other ways to do it, but using the checker is the simplest. From the checker, you can set the alternate text or mark an image as decorative. What does decorative mean in this case? It means that the screen reader can skip the image because it is not providing critical or essential information. The WCAG Decorative Images page provides detailed guidance about decorative images and how to tell whether or not something meets that category. And the general rule of thumb you should follow is an image can be considered decorative if it meets one of 4 criteria. It's used as part of PDF design, like borders on the edge of a page. If the image is part of a text link, that's generally more of a web issue, but it's good to be aware of. If the image has an adjacent text alternative, like a caption beside an image. We have an example of that on the slide. On Equal Entry's Facebook profile, the sides of our background image are cut off in mobile view. And then you have the text cut off in mobile view here. So the caption works as a description. And lastly, if the image is merely for ambiance, maybe it's a stock photo that someone added to the document just to break up the text, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't communicate anything important. Now let's go back to our demo document. Open up the checker. If every item that the checker flagged as figures alternate text failed was in fact a figure, as in an image, then this would be very easy because we could open the context menu and select fix, and we could go through all the images and either write out a description or check decorative figure to have it marked as an artifact in the tags panel. But for this document, a lot of what has been flagged is in fact not an image. So let's take care of the first alleged issue. Here is the first so-called image that's been highlighted, the first figure, but this is clearly a link, right? So we're going to have to change this from a figure to a link in the tags. So what I'll do here is I'll highlight figure 1, I'll open the context menu, and I'm going to select Show in Tags panel. And now this tag has been highlighted. I'm going to open the context menu on the tag, go to Properties, and in the Type drop-down menu, I'm going to change the selection from Figure to Link. I'll close the Object Properties menu. Now, the other thing we have to do here is add an object reference to be sure that the links tag is effective. And the way we do that is highlighting the link text in the document. I'm going to press Control-C to copy that text to my clipboard. I'm going to open the context menu on the text and select Create Link. I'll be sure that Open a Web Page is selected in the link action. Select Next. I will paste in the link text from before, and then I'll select OK. And now if I open this link tag, you can see that the object reference has been added, and this link is now active and accessible in the document. So let's go through our other images and make sure that everything looks good. And in fact, before we do that, we can even run this checker again by opening the menu for the accessibility checker here, going to Check Again. And you notice that we have one fewer issue under Figures Alternate Text because we just repaired one. Next up is an identical issue. We'll go to that tag, same process as before. We will change it to a link, close the menu, then we'll highlight the text, Control Copy, open the context menu on the text and select Create Link. Next, paste in the link text, and there we go. Go back to our next one. To-Go Kit. That looks decorative to me, because that's not teaching a reader of this document what a to-go kit is supposed to look like. It's just decoration to go with the text in the Make a To-Go Kit section. So we can mark that as decorative. We'll skip that for now because we can use the tool that I showed you earlier for marking something as decorative or adding alt text. So right now we're just going to go through and make sure that there are no other items that have been flagged as an image which are not images, and we'll take care of those first. This image of a dog is clearly an image. All right, another links issue. Right click, Show in Tags panel. Right click, Properties, change to link, close, highlight the text, Control Copy, open the context menu, create link, paste it in. There we go. Oh, here's a new one. This looks like a heading text. I'm going to change it to a heading level 2. Close it up. Looks good. Go to the next one. Looks like another heading level 2, mistagged as a figure. I'll change that. And the last one is one more link issue. I hope it's becoming clear that as ubiquitous as PDFs are, they're very difficult to make accessible. So if you can use HTML or Word or anything else, I recommend doing so. And now, go back here, we'll run the checker again, and we just have our two images. So let's go to the first one. We'll right click and we'll do the process I demonstrated before by selecting Fix. That is a decorative figure, so we will check it as such. Move to the next one. As adorable as this service dog is, I would call that decorative as well because it's not providing crucial information or illustrating a point that somebody reading this document with a screen reader needs to understand in order to make sense of that information in the document. So I will mark that as decorative as well and select Save and Close. And there you have it. There are no more alternate text issues. What's next? Headings. Appropriate nesting failed. What could that mean? Well, let's go back to our presentation deck. As we discussed in the word training, headings allow screen reader users to jump around quickly. If you're a sighted person, you probably take it for granted that you can look for the big bold text in a document and jump visually from big bold text to big bold text and so on, and figure out where you need to be in a document. If it's a digital document, you can use the navigation pane. If someone has already set headings, somebody who is blind, for example, can also use the navigation pane to jump between them. But if no headings have been set in the document, then a person using a screen reader will need to go through the document all the way from beginning to end, potentially, to find the information they want, unless they want to do a Control F to try to find some keyword. But they may not know exactly what they're looking for, and there may be other information in there that they would like to reach, and it wouldn't occur to them to search for it, and so on. So as an accessibility rule, we definitely want to include headings in our documents to provide that equivalent experience. We also want to ensure that headings are nested correctly. Level 1 headings are followed by level 2 headings, which are followed by level 3 headings, and so on. We don't want to jump from a level 1 to a level 3, for example. And we don't want to use headings just for style purposes. We want to use them to give our documents a logical structure. Now let's go back to our document. From the checker, I'm selecting the first headings issue here. I'm going to open the context menu, and just as I did before, I'm going to select Show in Tags panel. So we can see why the checker flagged this issue. We have a level 1 heading, Utilities, just above the one that was flagged, Pepco, which is a level 3 heading. So we're jumping from a level 1 to a level 3 with no level 2 in between. So the most direct way to fix this would be to change this level 3 to a level 2. I'm going to open the context menu on the tag, select Properties, and I'm going to change this to a level 2 heading. I'm going to go back to the checker panel. I'll go to Element 2, and it looks like the same type of issue. I'll open the context menu and select Show in Tags panel, and wouldn't you know it, it is. So I will open the context menu on that tag, select Properties, and I'll change that to a level 2 as well. I'll close that. I'll close the tags panel. I'll open the checker back up and I'll run it again. And that took care of it. That leaves only 2 issues to consider: logical reading order, which needs a manual check, and color contrast, which needs a manual check. So when we talk about logical reading order, we're talking about the order in which the document will be read aloud by a screen reader. This is really the order in which an adaptive technology is going to move through the document and be able to understand what's there. So we need to make sure that there is a logical flow and that everything has been marked appropriately so that a user of adaptive technology will be able to read everything. The really important thing to know is that the Adobe Accessibility Checker will always flag this as something that needs to be done. It requires the human knowledge of, I can see the document and I know what the flow can be, and yes, Adobe is matching that effectively. So as a preview of that check, let's just glance at the tag order in the document. I'm going to close the checker panel. I'll open up the tags panel. I'll start at the top, and we'll just go down one by one. So here we are at the top heading, paragraph. This looks like it should be a heading. So I could change that. Properties, level 1. And this works as a nice final check too. This doesn't appear to be a level 1. That looks like a paragraph like the rest of the text. So I will change that. All paragraph, 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 paragraph. Now this could all be a single paragraph tag. It's not essential that it be one, because this is still technically accessible. But it's just an example of how the auto tag tool doesn't tag things perfectly or flawlessly. It does its best. And it's a good reminder of why PDF accessibility is very much an uphill battle, and you're better off using Word or HTML whenever you can. And that's a check of the first page. And you would want to go through the document and just confirm that the order of everything made sense. It followed a logical left to right, top to bottom flow that you would expect in an English language document. The other manual check we need to make is for the color contrast. The contrast ratio describes the relative brightness of foreground text against its background color. And it matters because people with low vision may have difficulty distinguishing foreground from background. So in this example here on screen, I'm using a tool called Color Contrast Analyzer, you see in the slide, and I'm able to use this eyedropper tool to select the foreground color, which is the black text of the word select, and then that gives me the hex value. And then I do the same for the background color, this sort of powder blue background here behind select. Click the eyedropper and select it, and that tells me I have a contrast ratio of 13.9 to 1, and that I pass accessibility check, because for regular size text like this, I want it to be at least 4.5 to 1. For a very large heading level text that's above 18 point size or 14 point bold, then I can do 3 to 1. But for most text, it needs to be 4.5. The checker in Word, the accessibility checker, it scans for color contrast, but I've seen it miss things, so I'd recommend checking it manually. But just to reiterate, for regular text, you want it to be 4.5 to 1. That's smaller than 18 point regular or 14 point bold. Large text can be 3 to 1 if it's larger than 18 point regular or 14 point bold. And then your graphical elements, like your icons and so on, can be 3 to 1. Let's perform a color contrast test on this document. I want to scroll down, and I'm noticing that these website resources are using a text color that is a little bit bright on blue. So this sort of medium to light blue on a white background may not be strong enough. So I'm going to open a color contrast tool. This is the WebAIM tool. I can access it right in my browser. It doesn't cost anything, so it can be a good starting tool for you to try and use. I'm going to put it side by side with my PDF. I'm going to select the foreground color picker. When I open that, I will select this eyedropper tool. And with that, I will select the blue in this link. I'm going to select the underline because it's easier to reach and it's the same color as the text. And now I will select the white background. This is defaulting to white here, but I want to be sure that it's the exact same type of white as the document. So I will do that just as I did for foreground. And there you have it. It is 4.03 to 1. I wanted 4.5 to 1. And therefore, as you can see below, for normal text, this document would fail color contrast accessibility. A quick way I could change that without having to go back to a source document, if I had one, is to go to All Tools, scroll up to Edit a PDF. I could highlight some text. And I could change its color. This new text color should be able to pass. I'll adjust the foreground color and make it match my new foreground color here. 16:1, that passes. So I could go through and change the color on all of the links using that particular shade of blue to be sure that they were all at least 4.5:1. So our key takeaways from today are really the checkers are your friends, and that's the word checker as well as the Adobe checker. When you write and design documents, don't overcomplicate things. Try to keep things as simple as possible. Your heading structure, your use of forms, all those things. The simpler you can make it to communicate, the easier it's going to be to make it accessible for everyone and understandable by everyone. And then the final one is to keep your source documents, because they're much easier to make accessible than a PDF. So some resources for you. You can reach out to Chris Daniel if you'd like a copy of this deck. We have links to 3 Adobe documents, creating accessible PDFs, PDF Forms Basics, reading order tool for PDFs in Acrobat Pro, and a document from Level Access called Tagging Complex Tables. All of those are pretty helpful if you would like additional resources and information. And that's it. Thank you all so much for your time today.